Carner. Today, we are going to be tapping into metabolic fatigue. And first, let's just do a couple of fork strikes and ground into the here and now and arrive into our bodies and arrive into the breath. The topic of today, I'm going to probably come at it from a few different vectors, from a few different angles. But I really want to, there's every practitioner, every colleague of different sorts, from sports medicine to psychiatry and psychology to people who are builders and build large projects, um, like stadiums and things like that. Everybody, everybody to whom I have spoken directly has talked about this pervasive sense of fatigue and and also the generalized theme of how do we be an intergalactic energy source and have this human meat suit experience and the sort of dense complexities that is that. How do we navigate that? And how do we bring this larger energetic signature? A lot of traditions call it the self with a capital S. How do we recognize the disembodied sort of divine presence of the capital S self while having a bodily experience, right? While bringing it into an embodied experience and kind of doing that successfully. Nice. Okay. Let's all breathe together and we'll talk about metabolic fatigue. And we'll really talk about that for just a second. All right, I'm going to ground us. Good. Because in the end, truly, fundamentally and elementally, we have to connect with the ground. We are on this rock and we're also of this rock in a really concrete elemental way. So let's ground down. And then I'm going to talk just for a second about what I mean about metabolic fatigue. One of the things when I come up with the ideas and concepts and themes, the contemplations for these videos, I derive them from either repeated thematic expressions of clients who come in to do their personal work with me, or I derive them from themes that I notice in my own life that I'm dealing with and I see on other people around me. And so it is, I don't know, a couple of years now that I have been doing this very steady, every other week, Wednesday morning biofield tuning live. And as I was washing off my day yesterday and thinking about doing this video this morning, it really came to me that I want to do tomorrow's theme on something that I really need. I feel like I could use a tuning. And every time I've been in community lately or shared from the heart, something going on in my life, it's been mirrored nearly exactly by the people around me saying, "Oh, yeah, that me too." And I listened to a really compelling conversation yesterday on a podcast, and unfortunately, I can't remember the scientist's name, but she was talking about how expensive it is for us to have a brain. As a human being, we think so much metabolically about our digestion and our gut flora and fauna, and if our calorie burning is going well and things like that. We think a lot when we think metabolic implications, we often think weight, body, digestion, these sort of brute mechanics of being alive. But there are huge metabolic implications of having a thinking brain in the elevated and complex ways that humans can think that do differentiate us from different mammals and different animals altogether. And I was reading through some notes and journals this morning, and one of the notes that I had written a long time ago, probably 8 or 10 years ago, was, quote, not solving the most visible problem, but solving the most fundamental problem. And that really brought to mind the conversation, the podcast that I listened to yesterday, because the scientist who was talking about the metabolic cost of behavior change and noticing things and changing your life, she included a very intimate story about one of her daughters going through an incredibly difficult depressive period, and that for her to be able to recover and get out of this crippling and really not okay depressive situation in her life, she had to buy in, right? She had to completely agree that she wanted to change and invest in her own wellness and invest in her own process around becoming more well. And the road to doing it, per the scientist's deep dive, was that she had to get back on her circadian rhythm. She had to metabolically and hormonally reset her living fundamental systems to affect, quote, a mood disorder, right? To change her mood, to change her depressive period in life. And that these things necessarily go together and can't be cleaved apart is a huge tenet in my own work. And it's we are now getting to a place where I think fewer and fewer people are able to think, oh no, it doesn't go together. Yeah, what you eat and what's in your guts and how you're sleeping and what you're thinking and the stuff that you're watching and the company that you keep. That doesn't have any impact on who you are. I don't think anybody would really argue that at this point. We we used to have a really siloed uh, concepts of people's lived experiences and their bodies, and now we're realizing it really is all one. It really is all one. So I, for one, in this really interesting destabilized time, both collectively destabilized, and then I personally am going through many deep changes and losses and restructurings in my life. And even if I do them well, even if I engage with them in earnest, even if I'm on the right path, so to speak, right? I'm doing good things with good intentions in a good direction for me personally, they're still exhausting, right? It takes a lot of BTUs of energy. It takes a lot of metabolic zhuzh and juice to benefit your life. It just takes a lot. So, oh, me too. My life has been a wreck and being okay at the same time. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you for writing in. Yeah, this is where we are. This is exactly, and noticing fatigue. And I think in the broader description, the broader title, I put the taxation of emerging life. I'm filming this in Atlanta, Georgia, and we are at the tail end of our annual pollinating. And it's beautiful. It's a remarkable thing. Atlanta is beautiful this time of year, and to be such an enormous city and to have so much greenery is a gift. Also, the cost of pollen, even if you aren't, quote, allergic for your body to metabolize that much particulate in the air is a big deal. It takes a lot. It taxes our systems, and it can bring about a sense of vague fatigue that it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know why I woke up tired. I slept. And it's like, yeah, my body is having to incinerate all this stuff in the air all the time. So that's fatiguing. Phew, wow, there's heat. Yep, I hear you. Mm, 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 mm. So in this, in the interest of sort of tuning into a contemplation that I would personally love, I'd like to really join in honoring and giving a compassionate context to the types of metabolic fatigue that we're experiencing, whether it comes from running around in the pollen or doing a bunch of yard or farm work because of the emerging seasons, or if it's because you are sitting still in front of a computer or in your house or in your room and really thinking about what is the most fundamental pain point in your life and how would you best address it for beneficial change in your ongoing life. That, that last thing that I just described can render one so fatigued, but if somebody walked in the room and looked at you doing it, it looked like you were sitting in a chair. So the source of our fatigue and the depth of it may be deceptive even to ourselves. Mm. And knowing we're not alone, gosh, you guys, the amount of heat in the collective field, every time I do one of these videos lately, when I tap into the energy, it really is, I'm just buffeted by heat as if I opened an oven door. It is, I mean, there's like moisture on my arm. I start to sweat nearly immediately. I think it is a function of, well, just the amount of energy that's present in these tunings. I think the amount of people who are finding these and using them, it's kind of like in a concert when a bunch of people rush up to the crowd, it gets hot and sweaty, right? And when there's a bunch of people present, heat is generated. I think that's part of it. I think our collective bodily contraction, um, particularly around the way we keep ourselves contracted so that we can, quote, keep it together so we can keep going, that generates a lot of heat in the collective field, right? That was my 144 hertz. Let's do 174 and see if we can. Because kind of like pulling something out of the oven, right? You open the oven door, it's really hot. Okay, let's get our oven mitts. Let's pull out the casserole. We'll put it on the top of the oven to cool. Because at the end of this tuning, it's interesting, I'm also really feeling like I want to sit down. Boy, talk about tapping into fatigue. I'm so fatigued. I kind of want to just sit down to tune. Oh, right. Because what I'd like to do is sort of make enough room in the field that we can start to feel recharged, right? Identifying fatigue can be really useful. But at the end, kind of what we're seeking is, okay, I feel validated. Thanks for seeing that I'm fatigued and tired and that this takes a lot of effort. But I'd like to have a little bit more charge in my batteriometer, right? So I'm definitely going to charge us. And around this concept of fatigue, I'd really like to offer the collective the raising of the voltage, but I want to be very gentle, and I want it to be really holistically true, not the sort of fake glamour energy of too much coffee or an energy drink, right? I want to offer, yes, the energetic conditions for our bodies to naturally replenish themselves. I was able, Taylor, I do see your questions. I do have sound bowls. Um, I have sound bowls and drums and flutes and forks and rattles and kalimbas and tingshas and chimes. I have many, many things. And yes, beautiful tools are costly. They can be expensive. So I really hear you. I really hear you. And the forks, the investments, you do get what you pay for. It is always worth buying one beautiful tool and using it as opposed to buying many cheap things that don't work well or don't feel good when you use them. There is an economy in that as well that isn't to be overlooked, like economy of effort, economy of tools. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And, you know, we talk a lot about it in my yoga community about how right effort And doing things well is still oftentimes hard in this life, right? And right effort does bring about fatigue. It's not if you do something right, you don't get tired from it. There's a British actress named Tilda Swinton, and I saw a sound bite that she did about death one time, and it said, she said, it's it's as if when someone dies, it's as though they somehow suffered poor management, which is hilarious. Like, you guys know you can manage your life really, really well, and guess what? Nobody's getting out of this alive. You didn't render your life poorly if you don't make it out alive. That is everybody's ultimate, right? We're all getting there. So this metabolic fatigue, I wanted to tune into it. I wanted to talk to it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a CrossFiteer and that you're fatiguing your muscles, right? You can be really immersed in transformational life change. You can really be immersed in psychological and energetic and spiritual development and healing, and that is exhausting. And it can sometimes be very slow going. Sometimes progress is hard to measure. Referring back to the note that I read this morning about choosing the most fundamental problem to address rather than the most topical or visible problem. One of the reasons why that isn't very sexy or appealing to do, to address the most fundamental problem, is because progress is often hard to see and measure. And so we're doing something really hard. And how we're doing at it, or if it's really taking hold, is sometimes incredibly hard to see, or incredibly hard to see immediately. And that can be discouraging at best, or, really sort of despair building at worst. And but when you have community around you, when you curate your life, the content that you expose yourself to, the people who you expose yourself to, and if you really engage in earnest and share with them what you're doing, then people can help you see progress even when you do some of the most nuanced work. But it involves intimacy and vulnerability, and by intimacy, I really mean letting people in to your lived experience, emotional intimacy in that way. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I feel like the field is really getting tuned. There's really good work doing. I feel better. Like, this whole tuning feels better, and I still feel really tired. The fatigue is still there, and it's bringing up another quote, another note that I read this morning, which was rest. I think it's from David White, either John O'Donohue or David White. I can't remember which. And it's rest is the conversation between what we love to do and how we love to be. And I even had a hard time understanding that sentence, because a lot of the times I feel like rest is what happens after I get done with just as much of what I have to do. And while I do love my job, and I have created a life where I do many things that I love, and I have so many of the people with whom I engage are people I love. There still feels like a lot of responsibility and a lot that I have to do a lot of the time, as opposed to just what I love to do. One of my personal sources of fatigue lately has been that I don't feel like I'm being able to get to things that I just enjoy as much as I'd like to. I have many things that I love, and I love my work. I suppose you could say I'm lucky in that way, but I also worked hard to create that, so take that as you will. But I feel like I'm a quart low on just easy enjoyment. Wow, that really made me be able to breathe. Awesome. Let's all breathe into that. Doing things we enjoy. And buffering our metabolic fatigue so that there is enough time and space and energy to do things we enjoy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And not as a pipe dream. I listened to the author Martha Beck walk someone through an exercise called the perfect day. And it isn't some idyllic fantasy day. And so it's your best day, but that's real, like that you could wake up and really have, like in your house. What would make it your best day? And I think in in the exercise of thinking about realistic bestness, attainable perfection, that's how we start to make it possible in our lives, and it starts to show up. Sometimes in kind of magical and miraculous ways. Yeah, I think the antidote for metabolic fatigue is recognizing when you have it, recognizing that you came by it legitimately, and then making enough for rest and enjoyment. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I keep hearing rest and enjoyment as a counterbalance, but if to say that, it would imply that the way you got into metabolic fatigue was somehow bad, and that just most of the time really isn't the case, right? It's not a good scales, bad scales. Oh, I've got to counterbalance all this yuck that I've been doing. No, hey, friends, look, I'm right here with you. I am metabolically fatigued this morning, and it's by all the fundamentally good and beautiful and worthy things in my life that I've arrived at this place. So something needs to shift, something needs to be massaged, but it's not because I've been doing bad things or because I've been doing things badly. Right, right. There's that conundrum. There it is. Change is costly metabolically. Doing things well and with your whole heart is costly metabolically. one of the things that I've been contemplating lately is how serious I am a lot of the time. And it's an interesting dance and it's an interesting contemplation because I don't want to do anything half-assedly, right? I'm an all-in kind of person. That's the only way I know how to do something. And I think there is a lot of clarity of signal in being all in. And energetically, there is a sureness, right? A trueness of that. And the upshot of that is that you get pooped. Shoo, there it is. There it is. All right, this feels really good, you guys. I really want to, yeah, a last little bit of heat. Yeah, that funny little laugh at the end kind of relaxed a little bit of contraction and a little bit of tension in the field. There. Wow, awesome. I'm gonna I'm gonna sort of work up some frequencies and shine this up a little bit so that even if today physically we are still fatigued, we are holding the voltage potential of restoring ourselves and resetting ourselves to, yes, a more vibrant, good. Yeah, rendering ourselves into a more brilliant, resonant, and illuminated state. Wow, the clarification, it really is like it's like a foggy, oh, look at the rainbow on my hand. It's like a foggy mirror and then to sort of shine it up. Yeah. We'll do some binaural between 417 and 528. The differential is 111, 111 hertz. This is very calming for the lobes of the mind, and it is a sort of cross-meridian equalizer. If you kind of imagine having your wheels balanced on your car, right? It runs better. I mean, it rolls without having the wheels balanced, but when the wheels are balanced, it's a lot less fatiguing to roll on through your life, friends. Yeah. I have to strike one more time. I'm going to check in the comments here. Um, Thank you for those who write in. Thank you for joining me, RebeccaCarner.com. If you'd like to book in a session or to find out more information, also please like these videos and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to keep doing them, and I would love these free sessions that are real tunings. It doesn't matter the audio quality. The energy is transmitted. These are transmissions of the mind, body, spirit to the collective mind, body, spirit, and any mind, body, spirit out there has access to these. That's why I hang them for free on YouTube. So please share them. It is such a work of love, and it is really an act of devotion that I keep making these and keep coming back. It is really with a song in my heart. So, my dear fatigued friends, I hope this feels better. I'm out here too, and be well, be well. I'll see you next time.